Okay, here's a tutorial on using a reverse reverb effect on a vocal. This particular type of technique was popularized, I know, by Phil Collins. The song In the Air at Night, I believe, uses this technique. And even in motion picture, something like the Poltergeist, the creepy sounding vocal effect is using some combination of this reverse reverb, delays, anything that you can think of for sound design. So if you listen to this Avicii track on YouTube or Vimeo, when the vocal sample drops, he's using exactly this technique where the sound of Etta James' voice, the O.
Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling.
That O is actually going to start, you're going to start hearing it before the actual audio file and the sample drops. So let me just show you how that's done. I'm also going to teach you a little bit about working in the sample editor. The thing you need to know about this sample editor here in Logic is this is where you can do destructive editing. So you have to be careful when you're applying this technique. Let's look at a few just maintenance issues. So for example, to get this really right, I want to really zoom in on this track and get rid of this dead air. And I can just use my resize tool here and just use my eyes and do something like that. So that cleans up that part of the audio file. Now I just want the word O.
Oh!
And I only want it at the first pitch that she sings. I don't want when she dips down in pitch, and you can see in the waveform, it looks like it's happening right about here.
Oh!
Yeah, it's happening right there. So check this out. I'm going to use my marquee tool to chop. It's my command click tool, so I'll hold command and I'll just 2 clicks with the mouse and it cuts the region. Now this is where you can make a mistake. So for example, what I'm going to do is create a track underneath this track, create track with duplicate settings. Okay, now if I take this sample here and option drag it down like this, I'm actually making a alias of this, which is what I don't want. And let me show you what I mean. I'm going to be reversing this piece of audio right here. And when I do that, it's also going to affect this piece of audio. Double click to open in the sample editor. It's analyzing this audio, but you can also see that it's also seeing the part that is been chopped off. Functions, reverse. Now watch what happens to the above audio file here when I do this. You see it flips it too. So this is where you get in trouble with making edits and not having a backup copy. I'm going to Command Z to undo that. There are a few levels of undo in the sample editor. Here in the audio file menu, you can create a backup of your audio, and that would eliminate you destroying audio in a destructive way. Okay, so the right way to do this is by using bounce regions. I'm just going to bounce this in place. So I'm going to make my cut. I'm going to select that region, and I'm going to use bounce regions. It's going to create a new track. It'll mute the source, normalize off. I don't need to focus on these at all. I will shortly though. Now, if I try to reverse this sample in the sample editor, you see it leaves the upper sample alone. You can also see that it does create its own audio file. We don't see that information to the right like we saw earlier. So I do have a real copy now, and I can go and say reverse that, and it doesn't affect the sample up above. All right, keep that in mind. So that's the first step. bounce your sample in place, reverse it in the sample editor. Now the trick is this. You want to insert a reverb on this track. I'm going to use Space Designer. And I want something big because I want a nice long tail. So I'll go into the large spaces and indoor spaces and find something that I like. Let's try something like this 4.2 second central station. Okay, a few things to keep in mind. I kind of like to take the dry signal out when I do this technique and really just balance how much of the reverb, the wet dry amount here. Set our locators around this and take a listen. Good way to check reverb is to hit your space bar real fast and listen to the tail. That's pretty decent. I think it's going to work perfect for what I have in mind here. Now, what I'm going to do is bounce this in place, and it's going to have the reverb on it. I'll use that same technique. And now this is where I want to include the audio tail. This is going to be important because I do want that tail to appear in the reverb portion of the bounce. And you're going to see the audio file is going to be longer because of that reverb tail. So sure enough, this is just a big bunch of reverb here. Okay, so now the technique is this. I want to flip this back around again, this reversed reverb. So I just go back in here into functions, reverse. I can, in essence, get rid of this track here. I can unmute the original. If I wanted to, I could glue this back together by using the merge feature here. All right, and now it's just working to taste here. What I want to do is pull this to the front and just use my ears.
Sometimes I get a good feeling.
So it's just now a bit of balancing and listening and perhaps even doing some crossfades.
Sometimes I get a good feeling.
Yeah, basic idea. There it is.